Imagine this. You're sound asleep on a flight, thinking it's just another routine trip, until suddenly, the captain's voice cracks through the speakers with an urgent question. Is there a fighter pilot on board? What happens next will shock you, and it's something you'll never forget. Stay tuned, because this is one story you can't miss. If you're part of the Black Visionaries family, hit that like button and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this one. Tanya had always loved the peaceful isolation that air travel offered. The hum of the engines, the soft lighting, and the little world of passengers cocooned in their seats. It was the perfect place to disconnect from the whirlwind of her high-paced corporate life. As a 32-year-old corporate consultant, Tanya's job was always demanding. She just finished a week of intense meetings and deadlines in New York and was now on her way to California, looking forward to a break. She slumped into her seat, buckled her seatbelt, and closed her eyes, ready for some rest. The plane began its ascent, and Tanya allowed the gentle vibrations and the soothing hum of the engines to lull her into a deep sleep. The world outside the window blurred into nothingness, and she was lost in the comfort of the moment. It was, in every sense of the word, the calm before the storm. But what would follow next was anything but ordinary. Hours passed, and the usual noises of the plane filled the cabin. Snacks being served, light conversation, and the sound of movie screens flickering on. Tanya remained asleep, oblivious to the passengers around her. It wasn't until the captain's voice suddenly crackled over the intercom that she stirred. "Attention, all passengers." The captain's voice came through, sharp and strained. "This is your captain speaking. We are experiencing some unexpected turbulence, and I need to know if there are any fighter pilots on board. If you are a fighter pilot, please make yourself known immediately." Tanya's eyes snapped open. She rubbed her eyes, unsure if she had heard that correctly. Fighter pilot? On a commercial flight? What was going on? The cabin had fallen silent. Passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging confused glances. Tanya leaned forward, her heartbeat quickening. Was this some kind of joke? It had to be. But why would the captain ask for a fighter pilot? Was there some kind of emergency? The seconds ticked by, and still no one responded. The air felt thick with uncertainty. Some passengers whispered nervously to one another. Others were visibly more anxious, shifting in their seats, looking for answers. Tanya couldn't ignore the creeping sense of unease spreading through her. Something wasn't right. She glanced around the cabin again, but there was no clarity in the faces of the other passengers. Everyone seemed as confused as she was. Another few minutes passed, and then the captain's voice came over the intercom again, but this time there was an unmistakable urgency in his tone. "We need immediate assistance. If there is a fighter pilot or anyone with military flight experience on board, please make yourself known. This is an emergency situation." Tanya's stomach dropped. An emergency? This wasn't the kind of flight she had prepared for. Her mind raced with questions, but no answers came. The only thing she could feel now was the unsettling tension in the air. The once comfortable cabin now felt suffocating. Then, just as Tanya thought she might lose her grip on the situation, a man stood up from the back of the plane.
He was tall, with an air of confidence that made him stand out immediately. His face was serious, and his posture suggested someone who had been through intense situations before. He was not just any regular passenger. There was something about him that suggested he might just be the answer to the captain's question. The murmurs of the passengers died down as all eyes followed the man.
He moved to the front of the plane with purpose, his steps measured and confident. Tanya watched him, still struggling to make sense of what was happening. She couldn't help but feel that this moment was a turning point. Everything had shifted from ordinary to something dangerous. The man disappeared into the cockpit, and for a few moments, there was an eerie silence. The flight attendants exchanged worried glances, and Tanya could see the anxiety on their faces. The cabin, once calm and quiet, was now a scene of collective tension. The gentle hum of the engines seemed louder now, as if the plane itself was aware of the nerves in the air. And then it happened. The plane dipped sharply, sending a wave of panic through the cabin. Tanya's breath caught in her chest. The sudden drop was jarring, and she instinctively gripped her armrests. Passengers gasped, their faces a mixture of fear and confusion. The lights above flickered twice, and for a moment it felt like the world outside had disappeared. Was this it? Was this how it all ended? Tanya's heart raced in her chest as she instinctively braced herself for whatever might come next. This wasn't normal turbulence. This was something more severe, something beyond her understanding. The anxiety in the cabin was palpable, with every passenger on edge, clutching seatbelts and looking anxiously at the attendants. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the turbulence stopped. The plane steadied itself, but the silence that followed was deafening. No one dared to speak, unsure of what had just happened. Tanya's mind was racing with questions. What had caused the plane to dip like that? What was really going on? After what felt like an eternity, the captain's voice returned to the intercom. This time, his tone was more measured, though the tension in his voice was still evident. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the disturbance. We encountered a technical issue with the aircraft's instruments, and the situation has been resolved. We are back on course, and there is no danger. We appreciate your cooperation and patience during this time. Tanya sat back in her seat, her hands still clutching the armrests, though the turbulence had stopped. She let out a shaky breath, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something had been wrong. The plane had been in danger, hadn't it? The captain's reassurance did little to calm her mind. She glanced toward the front of the plane, where the man who had helped had been ushered into the cockpit. Who was he? Was he really a fighter pilot? What had he done to help? And why had the captain been so desperate for his assistance? The rest of the flight continued without incident, but Tanya couldn't help but replay everything that had just happened in her head. The man had been the one to help, but how? What did he do? She would never know the full details, but one thing was clear: this was not just another flight. This was something that would stay with her forever. As the plane finally began its descent toward California, the captain came on the intercom once more. Ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for landing. We thank you for your understanding and patience during this unexpected event. We would like to especially thank the passenger who assisted us with their military expertise. Without their help, we would not have been able to resolve the situation as quickly as we did. A wave of relief washed over the cabin, but Tanya still had more questions than answers. Who was the man who had stepped forward? Why had the captain needed him so desperately? As the plane touched down and the passengers stood up to disembark, Tanya remained in her seat for a moment longer, contemplating everything she had just experienced. It was a flight she would never forget. Not because of the destination or the passengers, but because of the mysterious, terrifying few moments that had completely changed her perspective on air travel. And as the cabin emptied out and the flight attendants began preparing for the next round of passengers, Tanya took one last look at the cockpit. She would never know the full story of what had happened on that flight, but she couldn't shake the feeling that sometimes, in life, the most unexpected heroes come forward at the most unlikely moments when you least expect it. If you're part of the Black Visionaries family, hit the bell icon for more unbelievable stories like this. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's talk about it. Until next time, stay aware and stay tuned.